Before we get to our guest this morning, and I asked him if he could, at least in a minute, he's going to reflect on the possibility of a third party candidate being recruited by Bill Kristol. It was announced over the weekend that conservatives believe they've got a guy or a girl. Well, all right, I don't want to insult people. The politically correct won't like that. A woman. We used to say guys and gals, and in this day and age, you can't be sure, so you've got to be careful in the first place. But I just want to tell you, our friend Dr. Eric F. Jones has had a tremendous response after his visit with us a week ago Friday on the air. And if you're looking to reach out and touch to someone who practices a holistic approach to your health, you need to give him, and that would be just your overall wellness, you need to give him a call. He's been doing this since 1993 and has master's and doctorate degrees in marriage and family therapy. And Dr. Eric F. Jones uses methods of alternative healing. These would be naturopathy, medicinal herbs, nutrition, sound waves, intellectual and cognitive self-regulation, and naturopathy. And that helps remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. Dr. Jones is accepting new patients. He's got evening and Saturday appointments available. And you can reach him by calling 208-731-7178. I need to mention as well his Facebook group. The page is Eric F. Jones. That's with a C in Eric. Eric F. Jones, PhD, mental health and wellness therapist. Joining me in studio today, Steve Millington, the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. And I have to thank you because after you mentioned last week about the work that was done at the cemetery in Buell, I went to Buell yesterday for the 10 o'clock Memorial Day ceremony at the cemetery. And gosh, that was a beautiful, beautiful ceremony.
It was well done, wasn't it?
The young woman from the Navy who spoke, she was the keynote speaker. Boy, I'll tell you what, I broke down in tears when she was describing her experience at Arlington National Cemetery, because I've had the same experience. When you literally see just those rows of graves, that you just, it's stunning. And then you start to, the enormity of all this. And then when she mentioned a personal friend of hers who was killed in the war just a few years ago too, it was difficult to get through that. But the cemetery itself with a big monument, I'm only worried because, of course, there's a crucifix in the middle of the monument, and you wonder when the liberals are going to come along and say you got to tear that
Tear
down.
that down, get it out of here. I didn't make it to Buell yesterday. I had family arrangements over in eastern Idaho, Preston area, and so we were over there. But the interesting thing was, as we turned south and headed south out of Pocatello on I-15 towards Ingham, there's a high school down there, and I think it's called Century High School. And someone had gone in to the football field and covered it with white crosses and little
pictures
flags.
with the mountains in the background.
Yes, a football field at the high school, and I just about wrecked the car. I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden I holler, "Look, look, 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 look." By this time, everybody's doing the same thing. We're gawking, so to speak. It's right just off the edge of the freeway.
Field of Heroes is what they call it.
Yeah, Field of Heroes. And it was just phenomenal. Just the attention to detail and everything laid out so picturesque.
I'm rounding, but I think there was I may be off by a few, but there's about 1,500 crosses, and each one of those designated someone from Idaho who gave their lives.
Yep. It was really unusual. Not unusual. It was kind of stunning as you drive by and look at it and you say to yourself, "Oh, wow, look at this, look at this." And even in the little cemetery down in Preston, Idaho, flags on many, many, many graves indicating servicemen and women who have passed away. So it's Memorial Day, we don't treat it like we once did. It's just another Monday holiday.
Yeah, I that part of it, and I don't mind people who have a picnic. I just think that the service in Buell was over with in about 28 minutes. I think I timed it, and that included they disposed of a battered flag, a worn out flag. The Boy Scouts they cut it up and they disposed of it properly, and you could have heard a pin drop while all this was taking place. It was just that beautiful a ceremony.
Yeah, just and it's one of those things. I hope we never forget. I hope we never forget.
Well, we're going to talk in the next segment of the program. Maybe there's a candidate we can forget who's going to be put up by some conservatives in this Never Trump movement. But we've only got about a minute before we go to the break. But we want to talk about that in just a little while. And Steve's going to also give us the ins and outs of the Republican State Convention. That's coming up this weekend.
This weekend, that's right.
versus the national convention, which is a little over a month away
Yeah,
still.
it's the end of July in
Cleveland,
Cleveland,
Ohio.
Ohio.
I'd rather be in Nampa.
I think I'd be content to go to. I'm not interested in going to Cleveland, Ohio. Let me tell you that
You
right
had the
now.
famous nickname "Mistake on the Lake," I think was what it was called
Yeah.
when I was a kid growing up. It's coming up on 8:30.
Oh.
Bill Colley with you as well this morning. Steve Millington is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. But just a note, coming up tomorrow, Dr. Jonathan Tripp's office will be represented. I'll get that out by one of the physician assistants. Tripp Family Medicine does this with us every week on Wednesdays between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. We call it Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. And what we'll be doing is talking about a medical issue tomorrow, and you'll have an opportunity to chime in. Maybe you have a question or comment and you need someone to point you in the right direction when it comes to an issue dealing with your health. Also would like to mention Dr. Tripp is doing a mission trip to Nicaragua with his family in just a few short weeks. And his boys have to pay their own way, and they need to make some money. So if you need someone to mow the lawn or clean the pool or clean out the garage, give the office a call, and they can set that up. In the meantime, more with Steve Millington on the way in just a few minutes on KLIX. Steve Millington is joining us in the studio this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. 56, Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story. And you can reach the show by dialing 736-0300. Do you want to start out with a phone call in this segment?
Sure, why not? Let's go.
We have a caller with us. And caller, you're on the air with Steve Millington.
Good morning.
Oh, Steve. I'm sorry. I was caught up in a phone call, and I couldn't get in on the other conversation about the gorilla.
Make it fast.
Are you still talking gorilla?
Make it fast. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I didn't hear anything said about the responsibility of the parents. We've had children and taken them to the big zoos, and my gosh, we watched them like a hawk. I mean, even when the little tiny monkeys put their hand out, to take the little pieces of stuff out of your hand, you hardly can trust them. But there hasn't been a thing said about the responsibility of the parents.
I just know that I did mention it briefly that when I was raising a little girl and I used to take my daughter and my niece to zoos and to marine land and various parks, that you can be as thorough as you want, but every once in a while, they get a lead on you, and it's unless you're putting a leash around the kids, there's not much you can do. I want to thank you much for the
Thank you.
telephone call.
That is important. We cannot discount the impact of parents in
Well,
everything we do.
Speaking of gorillas, the 800-pound gorilla in the Republican Party, Donald Trump, he's got his 1237. He's going to be
That's what they say. Based on uncommitted delegates who have now chosen. I think it was 1240 or 1241 is the latest count.
He's got what, Montana and California next week, right?
Yep.
So he'll be well over by the time we get to the convention.
Let's see. Can't remember now. Real Clear Politics said that the estimate is that he will have right in the 1,400 delegate count by the time he gets to convention.
So who is this? Because Bill Kristol said over the weekend that they have recruited someone among the conservatives to run as a independent candidate. Nobody seems to know who it is.
Yeah, I wonder if that maybe is just a fishing expedition to see if they can get somebody who's really interested in taking on that particular role.
Well, Romney immediately said it's not me.
It didn't take him. It was only about 15 seconds, and he said, "Don't put my name on that list. I'm not there."
And Ben Sass withdrew from the whole argument 3 or 4 months or 3 or 4 weeks ago.
And he reiterated that, if I remember right, just last week. He said, "No, it's not me. I'm not going there." And so now we're down to, well, who might it be? And I just look across the landscape and I say to myself, I don't think they've got anybody with any real substance.
Maybe Jim Gilmore?
Yeah, right. Let's Rick Santorum, for heaven's sakes. I think Bill Kristol and Eric Erickson and one other person that is mentioned with those two other names have mentioned multiple occasions in the last month to 6 weeks. We need a good third-party candidate who can espouse solid conservative ideals but let's get down to reality.
And now the libertarians actually believe too that Gary Johnson, who has no charisma whatsoever and admits to smoking marijuana just a few weeks ago, will somehow be a player. I see him taking more votes from Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whoever the Democrats end up with.
Than anything that would end up on the Republican side. You know, and it's interesting that Bill Kristol from Weekly Standard would kind of push this idea. I remember last fall reading an article in Weekly Standard where one of their writers said, it's going to be a long shot for the Republicans to ever win another presidency because the way the Electoral College is structured, you have to win this 270 delegates to the Electoral College to be elected president. And the Republicans, just looking at the map and painting it red and or blue, the Republicans just cannot hardly ever approach that 270 number.
I just think that Trump, though, speaks well to the working class voters.
Now, the thing that Trump has done is that he must have read that same article because he is now focusing on those not deep blue states, but the purple colored states which could easily be turned to the Republican vote. And so he's already stated that he's targeting about 12 or 15 key states for the election, and he's going to push those states to see if he can turn them and get over the 270 number. Well, any reasonable third-party candidate, and Bill Kristol's idea was, we don't think that we can field a candidate who can accomplish the 270 hurdle. What we're looking for is somebody who can get enough electoral votes that they prohibit either Clinton or Trump from getting the 270 and forcing the vote into the House of Representatives.
And as if somehow the House of Representatives would then go with whatever clown they come up with.
Yeah, give me a break. You've got Trump, who's going to be the leader in the Republican side, Hillary Clinton, who's going to be the leader in the Democrat side, and just give me the names of a half a dozen U.S. representatives, House of Representatives members, who are going to vote against their constituency for some third-party dude.
Not in this day and age.
Ain't going to happen.
We've got more with Steve Billington coming up. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. At 8:40, we have 56. Steve Billington joins us in studio, on Tuesday mornings. It's Tuesday mornings, it's plural, not studios. Although we do have multiple studios in the building, he's only in the one.
Yeah, that's true. We have lots of studios here, but I only come to one studio, and fortunately, we only have one Tuesday morning.
We've got more discussion about, of course, the possible third-party challenge, but also the state convention, Republican convention on the way. Just a quick mention. Did you know that our friend Dr. Christine Pickup is now the only locally owned independent hearing healthcare practitioner in southern Idaho? And she wants to remind you with advances in healthcare, people are living longer, healthier lives. But there is cognitive decline, of course, as you get older, and people with hearing loss have a much greater risk of developing that, which can lead to dementia. The greater the loss, the greater the risk. Keeping your hearing healthy is an important part of overall wellness. Knowing your hearing status and doing something about it can lead to a better, healthier life. And now is the time to schedule a hearing evaluation. You can call Mount Harrison Audiology for an appointment. The number 208-312-0957. So Steve Billington, of course, is gearing up for this statewide convention, which a couple of years ago was a near riot, as I understand, but it looks to be a little quieter this year than it was in 2014.
We sure hope that it's a little bit more better organized and controlled than it was back then. That number one, we all traveled to Moscow, Idaho, and it was not what you'd call a real convention. We got hung up on a couple of rules requirements, and the convention ended without accomplishing anything that it's normally meant to do. And no elected president of the state Central Committee, or chairman of Central Committee. So we had a protracted legal fight, and it was clear into the first weeks of August before the Central Committee met in a special session and selected a new state party chairman. It would be nice if we could somehow avoid that kind of an event.
I was
And uh, things are in motion to see to it that that doesn't happen. Now, there's 3 or 4 things that we do at a state convention. Now, we only have a convention every 2 years, and that is following the elections cycle. Uh, we do have what we call the State Central Committee, and that is different from the convention delegates. Convention delegates are allocated based on the number of votes that you cast for the congressional race in your particular district. So in Twin Falls County, for example, we had 13,000 votes for Mike Simpson 2 years ago. 2 years ago, and so we had 13 delegates. Plus, we are given 3 delegates. Every county gets 3 of them, kind of a mandatory thing, because they are members of the State Central Committee. So we have 16 delegates from Twin Falls County. Now, when the Central Committee meets, they only have 4 members from each and every county. You have the county chairman, you have a committee man, committee woman, and a committee youth person. So every county gets 4. That's not to say that those 4 individuals are automatic delegates to the convention, but they are automatic delegates, members, not delegates, they're members of the Central Committee. So there's a little bit of a difference there. The Central Committee meets twice a year. We'll have a meeting following the regular convention on Saturday afternoon at 3:30. The Central Committee will have a short meeting, and then we'll have another meeting in January, and then a year from now, in June, we'll have a Central Committee meeting, and again in January, and then we have our annual convention, or the biennial conventions in the election years. So, what do we do with convention?
Well, hold that thought for a moment.
Okay.
We've got a telephone caller with us.
All right, let's take them.
Telephone caller, you're on the air with Steve Millington from the Twin Falls County Republican Party.
Good morning, Steve. 2 things, Steve. Would you say that Donald Trump is always playing the victim card? Like, for example, when they said that the Republican Party was not giving him a fair shot and all this, always sounds like a victim. And also, would you agree with Stephen Hawking that Donald Trump only appeals to the lower common denominator? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think Donald Trump, number one, is a master of media control. And so playing the victim card, I think that's the word that was used, plays well in the media. And the one thing we do have to say about Donald Trump, love him or hate him, he knows how to work the media better than anybody that we've seen in years. And so when they dump these things on him, and he has an opportunity to play this quote victim card, that idea of playing the victim card, that resonates very well with most voters across the country, because we all think of ourselves in one aspect or another as being victims.
Well, there's a woman out there who says, gosh, everybody else was getting their emails at home. Why are you blaming me?
Yeah.
So, it's a lot of people actually.
So everybody has this, they want to play this victim card thing. So does he subscribe to this victim card in his own life? I don't think so. But keep in mind, he's after votes, and at this point, he is after delegates.
He knows that people out there don't trust the media.
And
if you say the media is screwing with my campaign, then a lot of people out there say, well, we're behind you.
That's exactly right. So he's playing the media. The 2 things at the very beginning, the 2 things that he said he really didn't like is that the media is working us over, giving us the shaft, and the establishment, the Washington establishment, is against us.
Of course they are. The Morning Joe crowd backed him during the primaries, and as soon as that was the candidate that they thought their liberal friends should run against, now they're turning on him.
That's right. Now it's the other side of the coin, so to speak. They don't want anything to do with him. So and as much as anything, when the conversation a week or 10 days ago was, I would be more than glad to come debate Hillary, and she said, forget it, I'm not going to do it. Bernie Sanders stepped up and said, I'll do it. And Trump initially said, okay, fine. Then we'll take the proceeds of that particular debate and we'll give it to charity. Uh, well, suddenly, all of a sudden, nobody was quite so gung ho to host a debate, but the amount of coverage and the viewership of a debate between Sanders and Trump would have been out of this world.
100 million people probably.
Oh,
yeah.
my good gracious alive. Unreal.
We have another caller. Quickly, caller, you're on the air at 8:51 on KLIX with Steve Millington.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, first of all, I'm a Trump supporter, have been from the beginning. But I have a question for you about what do you think that getting rid of the illegal aliens is going to do in our local, for instance? What's it going to do to the farmers and the dairymen and stuff like that?
I think that could be a real rough patch in the middle of the road. Actually, it's more like a huge speed bump. We have tremendous numbers of, and I wouldn't want to call them illegal aliens, but we have maybe.
Well, couldn't we bus in unemployed Americans from Oakland versus bringing them up from Veracruz?
Well, they wouldn't work. That's the problem. That's one of the things that we have discovered is that these people will come in here and they are, like it or not, they're willing to work. And it's a great opportunity, and they make infinitely more money doing these kind of jobs here than they could ever get done in Mexico. So it's a great opportunity for them. I think there's opportunities where that we could issue them. I don't think the word is green cards. Maybe we give them an orange card or something, until they develop some kind of a more permanent status. But for example, and I'm not suggesting we do this, and I'm not putting any onus on the Idaho Dairymen's Association, but the Idaho Dairymen's Association goes to the Immigration Service and they say, we need 10,000 workers to fill positions at the dairy industry. Give us 10,000 cards. We will issue them to immigrants, and they will come in and they will work for a season.
Now, state of Maine did welfare to work. My point would be this. Some of these people out there who we don't think would work, if we told them, if you want those benefits,
you got to work.
We got a farm up in Idaho that'll be just a perfect spot for you.
Yep. And it's not going to be the most classic job in the world, but it's a comfortable job, and we will not take away your benefits while you're there working. This is a method whereby you can rise above where you are. And as they progress, and okay, fine, they move on to a better status. They get a full-time position, and many of the benefits that they get from unemployment and so forth will be phased out over a period of time.
I don't know. Making people work, that would be mean-spirited, but...
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? That's terrible. Shame on me.
4 minutes to go. You were mentioning the convention and what you do there.
A couple of things. We're going to have... this is where we try to set procedures for the state committee for the next 2 years. We have a platform committee that will go through and evaluate all of the portions of the platform and remove some, perhaps add some new ones, and modify or correct those areas that are suddenly no longer applicable or worthwhile. So if party members want to make changes to the platform, they submit a notice to the state executive office, and they put it on a long agenda of items for platform. And it says, item number 3.1.1 is incorrect. We need to change it to read this way. And so the platform committee will go through and look at those changes and evaluate them and say, that's a good idea, we need to do it, or that's a really bad idea, we like what we've got. So they either have a straight up and down yes or no vote. Now, when the platform committee gets all done, they make a presentation to the convention floor. We had these changes proposed. We accepted these. We rejected these. Now, at that point, Robert's Rules of Order says that we can have a separation, and we look at each single item one at a time. And then the convention delegates can vote yay or nay on each one of those items that the platform committee considered. and the vote of the convention adjusts the platform, not the platform committee. They just simply review them and identify them. Some of them they just throw out because they need to be thrown out. Some of them they correct or modify or change, and then the convention delegates in total vote upon that action. So we have a rules committee, we have a resolutions committee, we have a platform committee, and then there's a credentials committee. The credentials committee is where we got hung up 2 years ago up in Moscow. They wanted to throw out the various delegates from several of the counties. Ada County was one, Bannock County. Twin Falls was a challenge up to Moscow. They wanted to throw all of us out. And so the Credentials Committee will look at these things, and the idea is, were they all elected correctly? So in the past 2 years, the state party has changed the rules for electing delegates to the convention, and you either followed the rules outlined by the state committee, or you could submit your own party county rules, and if the state approved them, you could use the county rules to select the delegates. Now, Twin Falls County submitted our own selection process. The state party approved it, and that's what we used to elect our delegates for Twin Falls. And many counties did that. No, not many. Probably 6 or 7 used their own county rules, and that would be the counties that have the largest populations. Many of the counties only had like 5 or 6 delegates, and so you would vote on each one of those delegates one at a time. Now, in Ada County, where they had 73 delegates, that's just not permissible. In Twin Falls, where we had 16, plus we have an alternate too, so you double that number. We have 16 delegates and 16 alternates. That's 32 separate votes. So we packaged them up and said, no, we're not going to do that. We can do individuals or we can do slates, and either one is acceptable.
Well, now, when we get to do this all over again next Tuesday.
It'll be interesting. Next Tuesdays, we'll be able to talk about platform changes.
Black eyes.
Rule changes. Who got thrown out? Who got seated? What was the good stuff? What was the bad stuff? But it'll be interesting. Stay tuned.
We've got more coming up in the next hour of the program. In fact, going to talk about the meaning of Memorial Day. A great many Americans don't know that. We want to thank Steve Millington for coming in today from the Twin Falls County Republican Party. 9 o'clock news is ahead with Fox right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.